Prince Harry returned to the UK like a man on a mission, though no one could quite define what that mission was. Some insisted it was a step toward peace. Others suspected it was merely the next chapter in his endless publicity tour. Either way, anticipation filled the air. Would he finally sit down with King Charles? Would he try to mend the broken bond with Prince William? Or would he, once again, use the spotlight to deliver another thinly veiled jab at his family? As it turned out, Harry's latest move was unlike anything before. His strike didn't come through a formal statement or yet another polished interview. Instead, it surfaced in the most unexpected way, through a heartfelt conversation with a 17-year-old boy named Declan Bitme. Declan's story is nothing short of extraordinary. At 6 years old, he survived Stevens-Johnson syndrome, a rare and devastating illness that stripped away 96% of his skin, hair, and nails. Doctors gave him only a 20% chance to live, but he defied the odds, enduring unimaginable pain to emerge, with resilience, grace, and remarkable strength. Men couldn't fake the strength Declan carried if they tried. After Stevens-Johnson syndrome nearly took his life, he learned to walk again, to read again, and to live again. That's why he was honored at the Well Child Awards, a ceremony that shines a spotlight on the bravest young people across the UK. It was here that Prince Harry met him. A moment you'd expect to be filled with dignity, a royal recognizing true courage. Instead, Harry somehow managed to make it about himself. It began with a questionable attempt at humor. Spotting Declan's sight impairment, Harry quipped it. Was probably a good thing Declan couldn't see him, since he had ginger hair and an ugly beard. That was his opening line. Maybe he thought he was being playful. Maybe he thought it was banter. But read the room. This wasn't the time to joke about how lucky a nearly blind teenager was not to see your face. And then it only unraveled further. Harry asked if Declan had siblings. Declan explained he had a younger brother, nearly 15. Harry's response? A glib. Does he drive you crazy? Mad? Just like that. No build-up, no explanation, just a prompt for Declan to start complaining about his younger brother. Strange on the surface, but it makes sense if you look at Harry's mindset. He was projecting, fishing for someone else to echo the bitterness he's carried toward William for years. But Declan didn't play along. He simply replied, "No, we get along fine. We're like friends." That one line shattered Harry's entire emotional setup. It wasn't just polite. It was a calm, pointed contradiction of the resentment Harry expected. And Harry's response? The awkward fallback. I love the correction. It's the kind of phrase people throw out when they've just been checked and are scrambling to act unbothered. A flimsy mask for embarrassment. Still, Harry couldn't stop digging. He tried to push the exchange further, hoping to steer it into familiar territory, resentment, rivalry, conflict. But Declan wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, he held up a mirror Harry couldn't ignore, one that reflected exactly what he's been missing all along. Harry has long believed that brothers fight, resent each other, and eventually drift apart. That's his truth, the lens through which he sees William. So when he leaned toward Declan with a casual, "Siblings," it wasn't small talk. It was an invitation into his unspoken club of sibling trauma. Declan didn't take it. He stayed, cool, offering nothing. Harry tried again, asking if they went to the same school. When Declan said yes, Harry pushed harder. That must be challenging, right? Still searching for conflict. Still hoping for affirmation of his own fractured reality. But Declan didn't flinch. No awkward laugh, no polite dodge, just steady confidence. It's nice having him around. We look out for each other. And that was the moment. You could almost see the flicker in Harry's face. Confusion, discomfort, disbelief. Because for a man who spent nearly a decade painting William as a villain across books, interviews, and Netflix specials, Declan's quiet response was more than an answer. It was a mirror, reflecting everything Harry lost. The idea that someone could genuinely enjoy their siblings' company felt foreign to Harry. Almost absurd, like hearing someone rave about airplane food or choose dial-up internet in 2025. It didn't compute. The silence afterward hung in the room like a heavy curtain. Harry had been trying to orchestrate a moment, a subtle nudge toward shared resentment, and Declan dismantled it effortlessly. Not with attitude, not to score a point, but simply by being real. You could feel Harry scrambling. He switched tactics, asking more about school. Declan's answers were straightforward. Yes, they go to the same school. No, it isn't weird. Yes, they enjoy it. Each response, delivered with calm certainty, made Harry's attempts look more desperate. And that's when it became clear. This teenager, who nearly lost his life at 6, had a stronger grip on loyalty, family, and stability than a man twice his age, with royal blood, global fame, and more therapy sessions than most people see in a lifetime. Harry wasn't just speaking to Declan. He was searching for fragments of himself, some trace of the person he might have been if resentment hadn't taken over. Maybe Declan's steady, calm energy reminded him of the man he could have become without years of bitterness clouding his choices. Maybe hearing a teenager talk with affection about a sibling struck a nerve he thought buried beneath lawsuits, interviews, and lucrative book deals. Or maybe the hardest realization was this. In railing against being the spare, he'd thrown away something priceless, his brother's trust. Prince William wasn't sitting there, but he lingered in. Every word. Harry's projections were painfully obvious. Each question about Declan's brother, does he drive you mad? That must be difficult. Siblings, right? Wasn't casual conversation. It was therapy masked as banter, an attempt to process wounds by pushing them onto someone else. But Declan didn't carry that darkness. His replies weren't laced with pain or resentment. They were simple, grounded, and honest. And in that honesty, Harry's bitterness looked smaller, weaker, almost irrelevant. Declan didn't see his sibling as competition. To him, his brother was a teammate, an ally, someone in his corner, not a rival in some royal drama. That contrast was glaring. On one side stood Declan, a survivor and fundraiser who's raised over $25,000 for charity, climbed the O2 Arena despite vision loss, and remained humble through it all. On the other side stood Harry, a man whose public image seems built on an endless search for validation, cloaked in bitterness and sold as healing. What should have been a moving, uplifting meeting between a prince and a genuine hero turned into something far more uncomfortable. Not because of Declan, he was steady, inspiring, flawless, but because Harry couldn't hold back his own unresolved pain. He couldn't separate the event from his personal grievances. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Even surrounded by strength, Harry chose to stay in weakness. That's the real tragedy. Not the headlines, not the gossip, but the fact that Harry, standing in the presence of real courage, still couldn't resist reaching for his own wound. Back at the palace, or wherever he was staying during his UK visit, that brief exchange with Declan must have lingered. Not because Declan said anything earth-shattering, but precisely because he didn't. He didn't flinch. He didn't take the bait. He didn't validate the narrative Harry has clung to like a lifeline. That quiet refusal spoke louder than any headline ever could. And the irony? Declan probably had no idea what he'd done. He wasn't trying to challenge a prince or expose manipulation. He was just being himself. That's the thing about those who've truly suffered. They don't exaggerate pain. They don't wallow in it. They've endured it, survived it, and come out seeking peace, not pity. Harry, by contrast, looked like someone still circling the same storm, unable to move forward while a teenager already had. Harry still looks like a man intent on turning his wounds into currency. But it wasn't always this way. Once upon a time, he was seen as the fun one, the unpredictable royal, the charming wild card. He had humor, charisma, and a rebellious spark that made him feel relatable. Somewhere along the way, though, he traded all of that in for something heavier. The moment he began cashing in on family drama, he stopped being the cheeky prince people rooted for and became the central figure in a drawn-out saga of grievances. The most damaging part is his refusal to see the contrast. The very people he has accused, William, Charles, the entire royal machine, have chosen to stay quiet. William especially has refused to strike back. Even when Spare hit the shelves, even when Harry dragged out decades of private pain, William didn't take the bait. He simply carried on. That's the difference. William, for all his stiffness and sometimes cold demeanor, has built a steady life with Kate and their children. He kept his head down. He's doing the job Harry chose to. Abandon. Harry seemed trapped in a cycle, circling the same pain and pulling everyone else in with him. A podcast here, a documentary there, and now even charity events became platforms for his grievances. The Well Child Awards could have been different. It was the perfect setup. A noble cause, a room filled with courage and a chance to celebrate. Others instead of himself. All he needed to do was smile, shake hands, and let the spotlight shine on those who deserved it. But even surrounded by resilience, Harry couldn't resist turning the focus back to his own struggles. With Declan, a teenager who had every right to speak about hardship, Harry still tried to frame his own pain as heavier. That's where the contrast cut through. Declan didn't whine. He didn't dramatize. He simply lived with dignity and strength. His presence alone was louder than any speech. For Harry, who spent years monetizing misery, that quiet resilience became a mirror, one reflecting truths he couldn't escape. There was no clash, no viral headline, just a quiet truth. Harry was outshone, not by royalty, politicians, or journalists, but by a 17-year-old boy who had every reason to be bitter, yet chose gratitude. Declan's calm presence carried more weight than any speech or memoir. He didn't need pity or attention. He embodied resilience. Cameras missed it, headlines ignored it, but the silence said everything. In a room full of true heroes, Harry still managed to cast himself as the victim, and that contrast cut deeper than words.